The snow had been falling since dawn, soft as ash and just as silent, covering the world in a pale, breathless hush. Elara stood outside her small cabin, her dark braids weighed down with frost, a wool shawl pulled tightly around her shoulders. She looked like someone who had stopped believing the world would bring anything new, someone who had taught herself to stand alone because no one else ever had. The cold clung to her skin, but she remained still, watching the white horizon as if waiting for something she had already convinced herself would never come. Out beyond the pines, a shape moved, slow, steady, the kind of silhouette that belonged to a man who had lived half his life in the saddle. His horse trudged through the drifts with the stubborn patience of an animal used to long winters. The rider leaned forward against the wind, coat covered in snow, hat brim stiff with ice. Elara didn't flinch, even when he came close enough for her to see the carved lines of his face. Loneliness had taught her to keep her heart quiet, even when curiosity whispered otherwise. When he pulled his horse to a stop, he took a long breath, like a man summoning the courage to speak words he never thought he'd have to say. Then he tipped his hat with a gentleness that felt out of place in the empty cold. "I heard you need a husband," he said, voice rough but strangely respectful. "Name's Rowan." Elara's fingers tightened in her shawl. Of all the rumors that wandered through the tiny mountain town nearby, this one had found its way to the wrong ears. She didn't answer at first. Not because she was offended, but because she was tired. Tired of pity, tired of people deciding her life for her. Tired of being the native woman alone in the woods whom people whispered about as if she were a creature made of story instead of skin. Rowan waited, snow melting on his shoulders. He didn't shift or fidget. He simply watched her with eyes that carried their own weariness, the kind built from years of loss. Something about that stillness forced her to look at him a moment longer than she meant to. "I don't need saving," she finally said. A corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, more like an acknowledgement. "Didn't say I was saving you. You rode out here in a storm." "Storm doesn't scare me," he replied softly. "But livin' without purpose does." His words landed in the cold air between them, too honest, too human. Elara felt something shift inside her, nothing large, nothing dramatic, just the quiet recognition of another lonely soul. But she wasn't ready to let a stranger into the fragile order of her life. "People talk," she said, almost bitter. "They think a woman alone must be desperate." Rowan shook his head. "I think a woman alone must be strong." For a moment, the wind dropped and the forest grew still, as if the earth itself were listening. Rowan dismounted, moving slowly so she wouldn't think he meant harm. His boots crunched through the snow as he approached, stopping several paces away, close enough to show respect, far enough not to intrude. "You don't know me," she murmured. "No," he said. "But I came to ask, not to take." It was such a simple sentence that it disarmed her entirely. Ask, not take. Most men she had met didn't know the difference. He glanced toward her cabin, the smoke rising weakly from the chimney. "You've been out here long?" "Long enough to stop expecting anyone to knock." "Then maybe today's different," he said quietly. She almost smiled, and that surprised her more than any snowstorm ever had. For the first time in years, the cold didn't feel like the enemy. It felt like a witness to something just beginning, something fragile enough to break if she breathed too hard. But before she could respond, the wind shifted sharply, carrying distant voices. Rowan reacted first, turning his head toward the sound. Elara stiffened. She knew those voices. Town men, 3 of them, familiar in the worst way. The kind who believed solitude made a woman an easy target. The kind who had come before. Rowan saw the fear flicker in her eyes, and something changed in his posture. His hand didn't reach for his gun, but the quiet steel of a man ready to protect rose around him like a second coat. "They come here often?" he asked. "Only when they think I can't stop them." "Well," Rowan said, stepping slightly in front of her without touching her, "seems they didn't expect me either." The men appeared between the trees, shouting her name, laughter sharp and ugly. When they saw Rowan, their steps faltered. He didn't threaten them, didn't posture. He just stood there like a man who had finally found something worth guarding. One of the men sneered. "We ain't here for you, cowboy." Rowan's voice remained calm. "Then turn around and leave her be." "Or what?" Elara felt her pulse hammer, old fear rising, but Rowan didn't move, didn't blink. "Or you'll learn I ain't as polite as I look." The silence that followed was long enough for the wind to howl through the branches like a warning. The men hesitated, trading uncertain glances. Something in Rowan, his stillness, his resolve, the quiet danger that lived under his calm, unnerved them. Finally, muttering curses, they turned and trudged back into the trees. When the forest swallowed them, Elara exhaled shakily. Rowan looked at her with nothing triumphant in his expression, only concern. "You all right?" "Yes," she whispered, surprised to find it true. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone with her fear. Rowan stepped back, giving her space again. "I didn't come to cause trouble. Just wanted to give you the choice people keep trying to take from you." She studied him, noticing the softness behind the ruggedness, the quiet dignity in the way he held himself. He wasn't offering her rescue. He was offering respect. "Come inside," she said at last. "Warm up before the storm gets worse." Rowan nodded once, grateful but not eager, as if he knew that rushing a moment like this would break it. As they walked toward the cabin, the snow swirled around them, not cold anymore, but strangely beautiful, like the beginning of something neither of them had expected. And though neither spoke it aloud, both felt the same quiet truth settling in the winter air. Something had changed, and there was no turning back.